the big map of Europe onto your bedroom walls. Get your passports ready. Learn basic conversational European languages and prepare yourselves for a trip around Europe, because believe it or not, for the first time in 13 years, Aston Villa are back in European competition. It may only be the conference, but of course, Unai Emery hasn't won that one yet. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to this celebratory edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am still Baz Barrett. With me, having just recovered from his days of partying after events on Sunday afternoon at Villa Park, and also bringing you some humorous videos of dogs playing football, which is probably our bigger contribution to the Villa community during the course of the last week or so, is Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest. If you are wondering what the devil I am talking about, dogs playing football, then you need to go check out our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby, immersed with all of the other Villa news, updates, polls, content, is a video of a dog playing football. So, just, if you think we talk enough rubbish, your heart will bleed when you see a dog playing football, in a good way. If you're not a fan of any of that visual nonsense, then you can check out our YouTube channel, whereby all our previous episodes are there. Sometimes you see us, sometimes you don't, like a pretty poor magic trick, but we are there. Our guest stars are there. You know, in terms of, if you want to relive the Brighton build-up, then you can go and check out the previous episode where we had special guest star Joe from Albion Obsessed. It was a big party, and we all did get to laugh at Spurs. So go and check that out if you haven't already. You can also, if you're not even into any of that at all, regardless of whether there's dogs or not, the safe bet is our audio, where you can listen to us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We are on FanHub. And, well, who knows where we'll be? Because we're going on a European tour to at least one place so far. Brings us nicely to events. Actually, no, I'm going to rewind a little. I was going to go straight into Sunday, but before we get into those events at Villa Park, at time recording, news has just broken that Ashley Young will not be offered a new contract to stay at Villa next season. His current contract due to expire, I'm guessing next month. So we are waving goodbye to Ashley. What are your thoughts on that, Will? I think, sad to see him go, I think it's fair to say, but I suppose the ultimate question is, would you have offered him a ticket to our European tour?
You know, it's a shame that it's not I Ashley and it's bye Ashley. I was quite shocked to see the news, really, to be honest with you, especially after the parties played this season. And we're getting European football. And I know that we're only guaranteed that one round at the moment, you know, the third qualifying round. But we're hopeful that whoever we get there, that we beat them.
I'd say, actually, to give me the chance to be a bit more optimistic, we actually get to skip the third qualifying round, and we're in the playoff round.
Oh, yes. There you go.
Snazzy indeed.
I can't count like Akanji, the Man City defender. That video, that's another video. His mental arithmetic is off the scale. But that playoff round, that qualifying round, the last one, whatever it is, we'll call it the cup round, right? Yep. Hopefully we get through that. I know a lot depends on Sevilla tonight against Roma. And you'd hope that we'd get through, that we'd need a bigger squad, that we'd utilise players like Tim and Archer and AJ as well. And having an Ashley Young around the squad to be able to play in some of the games to help those players through League Cup games, some of the European games as well, that he'd be a big part of the club, you know, and that he'd be a good person to have around. I know that ideally you want to play your best 11 all of the time, but you can't do that when you're fighting on so many fronts. You've got to mix and match a little bit. And he's shown over the last couple of years that he's a dependable and reliable player, even at fullback. You know, previously he was tearing it up on the wings for us. He's been great. I'd have given him a year, and I'd have said to him, however, it has to include coaching as well, so that you can help with the coaching of the younger kids. And then when you finally hang up your boots, we'll give you one of the younger teams, maybe the new under sevens even, you know, and you follow their progress through, or you can help out the under 21s or whatnot. So it's disappointing. It'd be nice if it turns out that we do actually re-sign him. You know, that's happened before with players that have been leaving. However, one out, one in with all of the big rumours, you know, with Marco Asensio at the moment. Saying that though, yeah, Ashley Young. I mean, what would you have done? Would you have offered him a new contract? Do you think he earned a new contract with the prospect of more games next season on our way to lifting the conference trophy?
I think in terms of what you mentioned in terms of a coaching role, that would have been, you know, an ideal way all round a player coach. So in terms of, we can have him playing if we need him. Hopefully not too much, even with the increased gains, because the only way I can see in terms of letting Ashley Young go is we've got somebody lined up to come in and be, well, you'd assume back up to Cash, but, you know, you always make a good point in terms of you try and get first team players to get that competition. Or whether, I say a blast from the past, it's not really a blast from the past. It's about not even a year ago. Are we going to, and he's had a mixed spell on loan, I think fair to say, this season. Would you have Caden Hessler as the backup to Matty Cash over Ashley Young? I mean, in terms, obviously the experience, there's no comparison. So that's an element, but Cash is probably first choice. I mean, there was a little bit of doubt kind of when Emery first joined about whether Cash was the first choice, but I think recent games at the end of the season looks like he's going to be. Whether you do go Young, or whether, in terms of, as you can see, what's happened on our left flank, left back, Moreno injured for the summer, having a top, I mean, you can have a debate who's better, Digne or Moreno, but I think Moreno, Digne's demonstrated he's a very good player, and so able to step in seams at the end. Do you look to do that at right back? And I think in terms of, if the answer to that is yes, it's, you know, a handshake, you know, hopefully, you know, in terms of you get him back for, you know, a farewell, you know, kind of proper farewell in front of the crowd. But I'm not, excuse me, I'm not as, I don't think it's an outrageous decision. Of course, if it turns out that we don't get another right back in, well, Hessler Kane goes out on loan, and so it's just Cash. And I am in the boat of should have kept him around. But just believing in the Emery plan at the moment. So it's thank you for your service. Always welcome back. Hopefully, there's somebody else coming in through the door.
I'm gonna try and save you so you can have a drink, because you look like you're struggling a little bit there after the coughing fit. You're right in many ways. You are right. You know, I think a lot of it is about it's romance, isn't it? It's the romance of football, and having a player who he left before, but he didn't leave under a cloud. He left.
I think he did first time round. I think in terms of the cloud deepened during, I think, the first season at Man United. I remember there was no love lost, especially I think the game at Old Trafford. We lost 4-0, and he went straight over. And I think that kind of eliminated any lingering affection. But I think time heals all wounds, and other such cliches were definitely applicable when Young came back.
See, I remember it differently. I think that he stayed for a year when we needed him to, and then it was very much a case of, okay, you can now leave with our blessings. And Villa fans were, they're upset that he left because he was one of our great players, but there wasn't the animosity there of, say, Stuart Downing.
Yeah,
who,
I agree with that, yeah.
But the dive didn't help at all. And then you look at it now, and it's very much, it's the road, as I say, it's been romantic. It's the football love story. You don't want him to leave because he is an Aston Villa legend in many ways. Not because he's gone and won countless cups and trophies, but because of the person he was, the leader he was, and the effort he gave on the pitch.
I mean, that'd be interesting, probably something to, expand upon in a special guest episode in terms of getting some wider canvas. Anna Paul, where do you put him into? Personally, I put him in the category of very good. Not great. Like the all-time greats, I don't put him up there. I put him in the very good. Cult hero, I for the second spell, funnily enough, more than the first, I'd say. I think just because when he came back, I personally didn't have a huge expectation that he would actually contribute a huge amount. And he contributed more than what I thought he would, especially this season. So, yeah, funny enough, more a cult. I mean, first time round, he was part of, for what you could say for a brief period of time, was certainly the best English. I mean, we had a better midfield than the England team with our all English midfield, along with, the aforementioned Downing, Milner, had Barry.
He's one of those players, though, that will get into your Aston Villa all-time Premier League 11.
Again, I mean, you are teasing, in terms of potentially what we could do in the summer. Remember, way back at the genesis of this podcast, we did do our all-time Premier League Villa 11. So, been an interesting one to see whether anything's changed over the last couple of years. He's certainly, I can't remember if I put him in my side 11. I don't think I did. But
I think he was on the right in midfield for mine.
He's like, in terms of when you get in the training camp together ahead of a big tournament, I think you could say he'd certainly be in the training camp in terms of that. But he evidently a very good servant to the club, and wish him all the best.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking back at the video that the Villa have posted on their Twitter page at the moment of Ashley Young, and it reminds you of all the great goals that he scored, the memorable moments that he had too. Goals against Blackburn in a 3-0 victory up at Ewood Park, or at least I think it was 3-0. It was the third goal that he scored. The goals that he scored in other competitions for Nottingham Forest earlier this season was a fantastic strike, and I always, and the 2 minutes of madness, if you like, at Everton away in that 3-2 win will always be remembered fondly by Villa fans. But for me, my favourite Ashley Young goal ever came in the 5-1 win over Birmingham City. And whilst most people will tell you it was the first goal where Olof Mellberg shanked it to him and he smashed it in from the edge of the box, my favourite Ashley Young goal, and probably one of my favourite Premier League goals for the Villa, was the second one, where he drops his shoulder, sends 2 Blues players to the shop, goes round him, has the shot, Taylor saves it, and he follows it in with the rebound. And ultimately, he scored a 5-yard tap-in because he had to. But it was all the stuff that happened before. I mean, he's been an amazing servant, as you say. It's a shame that he's left in the way that he has. And I think one of the things for Villa fans is that it would have been much nicer to have known before the last game that he wasn't going to be kept on, because, we could have brought Ashley Young on for the last minute, brought him on up front for the last minute even, or up onto the wing for the last minute. And then when full-time whistle went, they could all celebrate him as well as Europe. But it is what it is. Hopefully he finds a new club for next season and he can carry on for them. I suppose it'd be fitting if he went back to Watford, depending on which manager they've got and whether they'd want him, unless he goes back there as manager.
Watford have probably had 6 different managers during the time we recorded this episode.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see him end up at somewhere like Luton as well. You know, a Premier League team that needs some bodies. It's close to where he's from, you know, Hertfordshire and whatnot. So let's see where he ends up. But whatever he does end up, Ashley Young, from both of us, thank you for being a great role model, a great player over the years, and hopefully this is see you later rather than goodbye.
And we'll get him back for one of our European games.
Get him on the show. That'd be nice. BBA.
Yeah, you know, we'll have to, you know, get the feelers out. You know, get those contacts, and you know, we'll give him the send off he deserves. And speaking of the send off that you deserve, the Villa fans got the send off to the season that they deserved on Sunday afternoon at Villa Park, 4:30. It was such a momentous day. Even Sky decided to show Villa for the first time since about 1912. I jest. It was, I think, was it February? I think the last time Villa on Sky. Maybe March. Certainly not for a while. I think the Fulham game was on BT. From recollection. So certainly a long time. So a very late decision made by Sky to put the Villa game on. I think Saturday afternoon. I think it was announced. But
yeah, it was announced during the Man United game against Chelsea.
So yeah, a couple of days before. So if you weren't at the ground, you still got to see it, which is good news. I was at the ground, and I think in terms of, you all know the score by now: Villa 2, Brighton 1. But it was a game whereby one of the things that struck me the most was before I'd even got to the ground, before I'd even got off the train, which was my mode of transportation to the game, going through Birmingham New Street, fans getting on. There was a pie carnival atmosphere, and this was at least an hour before the game had even started. I think there was kind of that real feeling of, we're going to do this. You know, this is going to be the European tour that we've been waiting for all this time. I was almost a little nervous, thinking we've still got a game to win, you know, kind of first. And Spurs winning at Leeds meant Villa did have to win. So we got the job done. I have to say, even events before the game started, when I saw the Brighton team sheet, I felt a little better. It wasn't full strength as we anticipated, although still a very good team. I mean, I think that in terms of, I would say, obviously McAllister played centre midfield, just because we had a friend of the show, Joe, on against Brighton last week. I will indulge just for a moment in a player he mentioned has been a real threat. Matoma came on as a sub in the second half. God, I'm glad he didn't start. You know, he was, you know, causing all sorts of trouble for Matt Cash on that right hand side. You know, just brilliant bit of business from Brighton, as they had all over the pitch. But that's enough about Brighton. We like Brighton, but 2-1 Villa, predicted in the clouds. And in terms of, we mentioned it, a lightning start, Villa's real, apart from our high line, one of the notable things about Villa all the way during the course of this season, goals in the first 15 minutes. Highest in the league, I think, from recollection last time I checked. And another one through a man transformed. We're talking about in terms of reputation amongst the Villa fans. Dougie Luiz. Great finish, to be fair to him. And I think he has gone through a real, I say not rehabilitation, that's probably the wrong word. But I think there was, you know, not, you know, it's, you know, it wasn't love. You'd say at the start of the season.
A resurgence, wasn't it, really, for him?
Yeah. And it was, you know, so it was more known kind of for off the field activities, perhaps, than, you know, kind of the contribution on the field. But yeah, I think especially, as we mentioned in the previous episode, quite a few players you could say since Emre came in, their performance has really gone up, and Dougie Luiz is one of them. Good finish. Glad we didn't take, well, we didn't get an offer from Arsenal on transfer deadline day back in August last year that we deemed acceptable. if it was anything to do with Gerrard, why we didn't sell Luiz, I don't think it was. But if it was a turning point of the season, keeping Dougie Luiz, then we didn't even know it.
I think it goes to show. I mean, yeah, Dougie Luiz has been amazing, and deservedly he won Player of the Year. But you could say that about many of the players. Ashley Young was in the conversation. The other players are the likes of Mings, Conce has done brilliantly, John McGinn, Watkins. Yet the thing that defines them characteristically for me is that they've all bounced back from adversity at the start of the season. I know Conce started the first game, but Conce wasn't really first choice once Mings got back in. Mings had the captaincy stripped off him and had to look Gerrard in the eyes and tell him all that. I hope he has now. I hope he's looked him in the eyes and said, I'm in Europe next year, mate. The only thing you're going to get from Europe is going to manage in Greece. John McGinn fought back from adversity as well. And just really quickly before you start to bum off him, he was sensational on Sunday. It's the best I've ever seen him play, and he's been playing pretty brilliantly. Dougie's been amazing. He walks into most central midfields in the league, I think, and Ollie Watkins as well, a player who wasn't playing too often because Danny Ings was playing up front as well. There was a bit of hot potato around there. Has had a remarkable season, and it all comes down to Unai Emery believing in them and the trust that he's entrusted upon them to be a good team, to work hard with each other. But yeah, Dougie Luiz, fantastic. He took his goals so well, and to think that he got three goal contributions in the last 3 games, 3 games that everybody wrote us off with, and he's popped up, scored 2. Set one up as well. Jacob Ramsey, of course, has had massive contributions in those goals also. But it could have been so much more against Brighton. It could have been 4 or 5, really. Okay, they had a goal disallowed and they were dangerous throughout. And Ciso, I thought, had Matty Cash on toast at times. And I was worried after Cash got booked. But Bailey hit the bar straight away. Ramsey had the effort at the back post that he somehow put over.
Yep.
There was another one where it came across to Watkins, and he didn't quite score. I know Martinez made the World Cup save again for all of us in England to see. It's a remarkable transformation. You're right. We start really quick. Dougie Luiz, my days, what a player! And you can only think that next season with even better players around him, or with the other players upping their performance even more, that he will become even better too. But yeah, I mean, as well as Dougie Luiz, and I'm sure we'll get on to John McGinn. I promise we'll get on to John McGinn and Jacob Ramsey too. But unsung hero in many parts on Sunday was Boubacar Kamara.
Yep.
He did a great defensive job because Tyrone Mings, to me, didn't seem to be playing as a centre-back as such. He was following Ferguson or Rundown all around the pitch. He was opening us up at the back a bit, but Kamara was getting back. He put in that one amazing last-ditch tackle in front of the whole end in the first half as well. He hasn't got into the French squad today, but it's probably a good thing because you don't want anybody tapping him up. But what a signing he was. How we got him on a free, it's daylight robbery.
Yeah, I mean, there were quite a few teams sniffing around him at the back end of last season, so you have to give the scouting team at Villa the credit. You have to give Gerrard, I think, some partial credit because I do. Whilst it may not have been the sole reason he came, I think as a central midfielder, being able to be around, to be fair to Gerrard, we've got views in terms of how the managerial career ended up panning out at Villa, but as a player, his record is unquestioned. So if there was an element of that presence assisting in the deal, fair play to that. But I think in terms of you've been mentioning players, in terms of putting through the good performances and their transformations. And we talked about this previously, but I think it's summed up in terms of the team that started on Sunday. all 11 were at the club on the first game of the season away at Bournemouth. And we all remember what a car crash that was. And you look in terms of the bench, then Donker was on the bench. He came in near transfer deadline day. Apart from that, every single other player in the matchday squad was at the club to start the season. And this was a team who I remember talking about laughing at other teams. October, when Chelsea came to town, they played us off the park when they won 2-0. They could have won by more. Gerrard after the game saying, well, it's Chelsea. What do you expect? Really type thing. Yeah, lots changed since then. And you mentioned in terms of Louise playing potentially with better players next season in anticipation of some transfer upgrades coming in. Just imagine how good we're potentially going to be next year if we get a few players of better, well, I say better, I mean of maybe more proven European international quality, although our team is full of internationals, which is why we will kind of go into the pre-season predictions in upcoming episodes. But ultimately, and you can question how we got there, at the start of the season, you said Villa would come 7th, and I said they would come 8th. So you were bang on. I was only 1 place off, and that was because you don't play football on paper and all that, but we got some good players, and good players and good coaching equals a good team and a good result. Better players and good coaching, yeah, it's we'll let our dreams run away with us. Well, pretty much over the summer, really, and until we start playing. But so Sunday was like the culmination of a feeling that we've had for a while and we've expressed for a while. The Villa are back where just in that conversation of this is a good team. This is a team. Oh, you're gonna have a tricky day at Villa Park, whereas even. I'm trying to. The numbers will tell you. The stats will tell you. 7 wins in a row at Villa Park, the longest winning run since February 1993, from recollection, when we came second in the league. Funnily enough, if you win 7 games in a row at home, you're usually a good team and you're usually nearer the upper end of the table. So it's all pointed good, and I think in terms of the. You could tell the kind of the celebratory scenes at the end, the players going back on and interviews, and it's all that. It's been, even though we've been a Premier League team for the last few years, and in terms of some of the most memorable moments of being a Villa fan will have happened in those last few years. I mean, in terms of completely different reasons. Grealish's goal at West Ham on the final day of the first season back in the Premier League is, that. For me personally, that'd be top 10 in terms of Villa moments that I would always remember. Mentioned it last week, the El Amadi, the Trezeguet El Amadi semi-final goal against Leicester in the League Cup that year. That'll be another memory. So we've had those memories, but a team over the last few games at home, we played Newcastle, we played Spurs, we played Brighton. Brighton maybe on the beach a little bit, but still very good team.
Yeah,
and we beat them all, and so maybe I'll need a new gimmick next year. I'll have to spend the summer. Maybe it will be positive Will and still positive, but slightly less positive Baz, rather than negative Will. But negative Baz. But in terms of and the fact remains. I get the impression from Emre, very pleased with the achievement, great achievement. Should be absolute shoo-in for manager of the year, frankly. But what excites me more is not the fact we came 7th. It's the fact that I'm pretty sure Emery will be. Well, he's obviously listening to this show during the week, but he's there already working on next season. He's already there working on players and training and tactics, wanting us to be even better next year. That's what excites me. It's like this isn't the end. I get the impression that this is just the start.
Oh, definitely. And the other really exciting thing when you get down to the nitty gritty is Emery was there for 25 games, which is what, pretty much 2/3 of the season. If he'd have been there for the first third of the season, because you read all this stuff, you always hear that a new manager needs time to settle in. Emery didn't. A new manager.
I'd say the World Cup. I know we had a few players at the World Cup, but not a huge amount. I think that definitely helped.
But Man United and Brighton, we beat both of them before the World Cup. The new manager bounced. It's that ball's still bouncing at the moment, and then you think about, he has to bring in his own players. No, he's brought in, like, Alex Moreno is the only real player to come into the starting lineup. He'll need time to adjust his formations and for players to get used to it. Okay, World Cup aside, they just gravitated towards him. If we'd have had him through this first summer and these 13 games to start with, we'd have qualified for Europe weeks ago. I really do believe that. And out of the 3 new teams that have got into Europe, and I know that us and Newcastle aren't new to Europe, but we are for a while. We're not one of the favoured 6. I actually think that with the extra pressures of extra games, and I'm really hoping we're going to have quite a lot of extra games, I think we're going to be the best equipped to still do really well in the Premier League and challenge in the League Cup and the FA Cup, because you can't help but have faith in this beautiful, beautiful man, this manager who seems to have fallen in love with the club, taken it to heart. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of the team talk that he's written up for the Brighton game, and there's pictures from people who've been on tour, and at the very bottom how he puts up the villa. You just sort of think, my day, the game, you'll know better than me, because I watched it on Sky, or as much as I could, because of that damn Sky not turning the game over. When he spoke, I think if he wanted to speak for 2 or 3 hours, the fans would have stayed there and listened to every single word he said and absorbed it. He just gets us as a club, and he understands that you don't get anything in life unless you put hard work and graft into it, and he's leading by example.
Yeah, I mean, the results are there on paper, and are also there with your eyes in terms of there, as we mentioned, there is a style of play that you can tell this team is trying to implement, and there is a tactical base. Whether you agree with it or not is a different question, but you can say this is an Aston Villa team. They are going to play in this way, and you know what it is, which has been certainly lacking under Gerrard. Arguably in terms of Dean Smith, well, you could say the plan was get the ball to Gerrard. Not Gerrard, sorry. That would have been a plan. Get the ball to Grealish. That was our tactical plan, which, to be fair, when you've got a once-in-a-generation player, isn't a bad plan in terms of that. But sadly, doesn't quite work when you haven't got...
Under Emery. Imagine what he would do under Emery.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Grealish will come back at some point in the future, like Ashley Young, But I mean, in terms of European competition, you mentioned, I think, there's going to be competition from teams who weren't in Europe who are qualified for Europe. Chelsea, they've appointed Pochettino. If they go and buy a striker, I think they'll do things. Funnily enough, to continue with theme, if Spurs get their managerial appointment wrong, then I can see them going back to kind of their early 2000s. Good on their day, but lads, it's only Spurs. So we'll look at that. But, It's not lads, it's only Spurs on Talking to Trinity podcast. It's lads and girls and everybody. Everybody is welcome to our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby, we're keeping you up to date with all the latest Villa news, views, videos of dogs, polls, absolutely everything in between. We got our audio channels, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We're on FanHub. We're also on YouTube for your visual delights. Before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity for his final words, very simple for me. Get your passport ready. I'll see you at the boarding gate. Cheers. Thank you very much for listening, watching, engaging during the course of the season. We're not going anywhere over the summer, but, enjoy plotting your European tour.
Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Everything he says, I've got to go. Europe's calling. Up the Villa.